Forgive me, I'm just sending some links. Hang on a sec. Sorry. So irritating. All right, I think we're good. Okay. Ba-dum, bam, bam, ba-dum. That's going well. Having a good day. Let's go. Hello, Diane. Sorry. Okay. Sorry about that. I was waffling anyway, so sorry, but I don't know what happened there. I dropped out. Who knows? Ghost in the machine, as usual. Let me just check. Everything's running. Ugh. Oops, excuse me. Seem to be going well. Okay. Well, usually what happens is that everyone drops away, but you know, people might struggle. Yeah, it's not like I'm in the millions anyway. I'm sure we'll live. And most of this is just a monologue to the camera anyway. But anyway, I got off to a painkillered fucking start. So anyway, let's play with snap filters again. Maybe that's what made it all slow down. Maybe that just kicked it off. Anyway, sometimes the internet just drops out. So, good morning. Hello. Now, so I'm always in two minds about whether to start over. Yeah, I will. Okay. Not start over, just do it a bit better this time. How's that sound? So, yeah, so, you know, today's video, well, today's stream, it's mostly just, there's so much going on. There's just so much going on. And it's just that time of year where I have just too much to do before the end of the year. Because when you're self-employed, you know, basically it's like you got to do all this work. You either get paid sort of, you know, by December 15th or you don't get paid till February because everyone goes away and everyone goes on holiday and, you know, all that sort of stuff. So there's always that mad scramble at the end of the year where, you know, it's funny actually, my kids have grown up with an appreciation for what it's like to live with a self-employed parent because, you know, like many years it would be highly dependent on whether a client had the good grace and kindness to pay their invoice on time before Christmas. You know, my younger freelance, you know, years. Now I just fire people who don't pay on time because I just don't have time for that shit. But, you know, but in the early days, you know, people would just not pay or would, you know, starve you out or, you know, you'd do all of the work and, you know, they'd sort of not pay you before Christmas. So sometimes you'd be, you know, sitting there waiting, wanting like someone paying their bill is being a Christmas miracle. It's it's one of those things that if you're a 9-to-5er or, you know, have a sort of a salaried or whatever, you take that for granted. But that's been my kids' reality, you know, since my son was born. and he's 17 now. So, that's been how I worked. But it's pretty funny to think back actually about the old Christmas miracle but anyway, so yeah, I'm a bit flat out at the moment, but there's just so much going on, and there's just so much noise and so much just there's so many people keep going, oh, you should talk about this thing and you should talk about that thing, and I'd like to hear your thoughts on Balnciaga, and I'd like to hear your thoughts on this, and then you got the Twitter files stuff dropping, and I'm having conversations about Elon Musk, and everyone's going, it's like, oh, fuck, okay, where do I talk? So I'll talk around it in a way. Maybe we'll talk about the takeaway from all of these things and maybe the themes that are emerging, right? So, obviously, so let's start with, a month ago, Twitter Blue was released, where you could get your check mark, okay, for, in Australian dollars, $11.49 a month, $8 US, and, varies wherever. Now, I think you can only get it in US, Australia, and Canada, I think. Twitter Blue is only available in a handful of countries anyway. But basically, there was like a three-day window where you could sign up for Twitter Blue, get your check mark before he closed it again, and it's now on pause. Now, part of the reason why, people think, and I've talked about this, I've been doing a lot of streams about Twitter, but I think the way that you use social media informs sort of, much like the platform you use and the media you consume informs sort of a lot of your worldview. I think that the way that you use certain platforms, or the way that you engage with social media, determines like its value to you as a user, right? And so this is why the whole thing this is why it's just I've talked about all this before, about sort of the entitlement and the mooches, and the fact that this stuff's not free, the fact that those who benefit from, they complain, especially on the left, right, who complain about like the business model, they complain about the fact that our data's sold, complain about ads, complain about everything, but also won't pay for something. Okay, so they just it's like, well, okay, what are you going to do? And also, they're the ones that, the left-wing check marks who are like, this MF paid for Twitter. Ha ha. Imagine paying for something that I use. Like that kind of, that talked about that sort of mindset, that's not a socialist mindset. That's a mooching mindset. That's rent seeking. Okay. They're separate things. Okay. Socialism is an economic model and an approach. It's not a fucking, it's not a worldview, and it doesn't automatically make you a good person just because you are, left wing. Okay, anyway, side point. But that's not what this stuff's about, okay? Which is that under these things, there's still a market. You still pay for what you use. You still got to pay, things still cost money. There's still a cost associated with making things, whether it's the government paying the cost of labor or a private company. That's, someone's got to pay the bill, okay? Yes, things may be a little more achievable or economical or evenly distributed under a socialist system because, obviously, that exploitation layer is, that, again, I'm rabbit holing into exploitation and what that means, because a lot of people think that anything that isn't manual, this is this sort of socialist larpy shit where it's like, what do you mean by labor? Do you mean manual labor? Or because, I think that I have a more sort of a nuanced view on capital generally, which is that, when you invest in a business and you put your money on the line and you absorb the risk and you help to build the business, that is labor too. Okay. And I think that a lot of people seem to think this very simplistic worldview. It's a very, binary thinking, right? And this is where I can get back on topic. I apologize. I've had painkillers and I woke up like at 2:30 in the morning with pain, and I took painkillers. And so no, I'm a little tired now as well, but that's okay. It's going well. It's going really well. But this is that problem with like this whole fucking thing, which is, you know, like a month ago, this whole thing was just blown wide open, wide apart about like the value of a social platform like Twitter, the value of something like a check mark. Okay. A lot of people who seemingly don't value Twitter, but seem to value it enough to be very upset about things. Okay. And it's this, and, you know, people who are constantly talking about, you know, exploitation and how, you know, the check mark is something that isn't really all that important, that they won't pay $8 a month for, but they also seem to think is very, very important and enough to like pitch a fit over and lie over, right? But this is, you know, and this is where I think and again, this is just fucking idiots. Like most people don't understand sort of, it's interesting actually. I'm going to digress, but that's what I do. It's what I do best. But I've been sort of talking I've been diving more into Orwell. Okay. A lot of his, you know, not just his works of fiction, but his journalism, right? Oh, for fuck's sake. Really? Are we doing that today? Are we? You go find yourself a hot girl by paying fucking $250 a month on Patreon for the right to jerk off. Otherwise, fuck off, bot. I know it's a bot. It's just a bot. But it's fun. Fat lot of good that Stream Elements bot is. It's going well today. Okay, so no, but you know, like, but with Orwell, right? One of Orwell's, and this is like, it's like you get all these fucking right wingers, and they're like, oh, it's Orwell. He was a socialist, guys. George Orwell was a democratic socialist. Okay, now I'm someone who doesn't tend to split hairs in terms of democratic socialist versus, you know, social democrat versus, you know, libertarian socialist, Marxist socialist, Marxist Leninist. You know, those splitting hairs are good in an academic setting. They are good when you are talking about sort of, you know, where the differences are, okay? But when you're using it as an identity, which a lot of people do, which is, I'm a Marxist Leninist. No, yeah, it's like, well, no, because everyone, it's like, it's just a big tent, much like feminism, much like that. It's a broad tent with the goal, okay, which is what is the social goal? What is the outcome that you want, okay? And, you know, if your goal is, you know, everybody to, you know, an agreement, where can we agree? We all ultimately agree that people should be free to live the good life, okay, or live a good life and not be forced to work under coercive circumstances, you know, in subsistence. You know, should have their basic needs met, be able to be, you know, supported and you know, feel good in the community and, you know, ultimately all that sort of stuff. That's the goal. The rest is quibbling, okay? I've also found that this is just something that I'm starting to notice, which is that, and I think I talked about this just before the fucking stream. I'm a bit rattled now from the stream shitting itself, so I apologise. This is not going to go well, but I'm just going to sit here and talk. Because I've got a lot of different thoughts swimming in my head today because there's a lot going on. There's just a lot to distill. So I'll try to impart a little bit of where my thinking is. You know, it's not like people watching in the thousands anyway. It's all good. But this is the problem of just quibbling in general. But when you know, again, you got to look at the data. When you know there's everyone's got an opinion on something. Everyone's got fucking, you know, there's what the feeling is, what the perception is, what everyone's got a fucking opinion on, and then there's the actual data, okay? The data says that most people don't understand these systems. Most people don't understand the theory, and I'll tell you now, like I said, most people don't have, you know, the time to become an expert in these areas. A lot of opinions, okay? I happen to know that there's probably maybe 5 people who have the unique combination of skills that I've got, and the other 4 are working in fucking running troll farms for the bad guys, okay? There's not a lot of people who share my expertise. And so when you have someone who I had an interaction on LinkedIn, oh God, LinkedIn guys. Now I just play stupid now, where I just said, that's capitalism, bro. And he goes, and then he did like four paragraphs about the difference between end stage corporate capitalism and crony capitalism versus guild capitalism. And I'm like, would you just go away? Right. And it's like, but it's one of these, again, these guys who are like, it's usually tech bros, and they think that because they're smart in one thing that they fucking know everything about everything else. And it's like, no, I know 3 things. Okay. I know a lot. I'm pretty smart. And you're telling me about my own discipline right now, and you're looking like a fucking idiot. But anyway, so let's get, again, lots and lots of details, lots and lots of events, lots and lots of stuff. Okay, but what's the sort of broad theme that we're looking at here? Okay, are we, with Twitter, a lot of the broad theme at the moment is like, whether you're actually doing anything by engaging in a constant, never-ending moral panic, whether you are focused on the right things, okay, whether you're actually just being distracted and used for political purposes, but also, and whether you are actually just promoting censorship with a different, different like flag on it, right? Sorry, a little bit flag. But with Twitter, right, I think when you, like I said, when you are focused on truth and sort of empiricism, I think you'll find that you just naturally end up pissing off like ideologues and dogmatic people, okay? Like my position on Balnciaga is a lot more loose than others, okay? I happen to see, again, having worked in advertising and having worked in these areas, I can suspend certain things and go, no, advertising in this instance can be artistic. And if it's art, then it has a different standard. There's all these sorts of things, right? The problem is that you've got, again, this is, anyway, I'll talk about that later. But so my first month, so basically, what is the inherent value of these social platforms? Are the people who are, calling themselves experts, but, won't even think about paying $8 a month for their check mark, and they're salty and they're like, oh yeah, this MF bought Twitter. It's like, this MF paid for Twitter. And they basically, they had these, the disinformation campaign, the pods, the engagement pods, running with that. Like you'll see with the Twitter files release as well, they run with the same talking points, okay? If you've been watching me for any length of time, you know that, that's easy to do. It's easy to accomplish. You just get 50 friends and, you just basically just, get them to vary their talking points and make it their own, but you're ultimately just flooding with the same message. Like that's a common thing. And the reason why they vary it, like you saw a flood of sort of, traditional like bad faith blue checks on the anti-Elon Musk train who were, tweeting seemingly in unison about being PR for the world's richest man. And, but what they'll do is you'll notice that, because they can't actually just copy and paste because that would be bot detection, right? What they will do is say, here's the version of the tweet, make it your own and do your own variation on it. But what you'll see is if you are savvy enough with, comms and patterns, you'll know that when you can just tell when something is a coordinated campaign or it's inorganic because of the way that people, and these people obviously aren't very clever, right? They're not very bright. So obviously they look like they've got the plausible deniability that they're varying the tweets, but they're not really. They're just getting around the platform manipulation stuff with plausible deniability, but really ultimately just repeating the same tweet over and over again with slightly different versions of it. But we've talked about those things before. But I think that it's worth paying attention at the moment to how you are used in these things, how these things trip up all of your lizard brain emotions, okay, and get you swept up into moral panic, okay? And I keep saying moral panic on purpose because all of this trans stuff is now heading into satanic panic territory. And if you're heading in that direction and and anything I say today upsets you, okay, that means you've either got some sort of, trauma, okay? Now, I'm not one to say that I don't like the fact that I have to declare my own private life in order to have credibility on an issue, but I'm going to say that I was, first of all, a former child protection worker. I've seen child abuse. I'm not defending any of it, but I also know what real child abuse looks like, okay? Real child abuse, okay? I know what sort of threshold it takes to have children taken away from their parents. I know what I know the complexities of this stuff, okay? Also, you've got to remember the fact that removal from the home or put into foster care, okay, is the absolute last resort when you're talking about, when you say think of the children, what's your solution? How do you protect the children? You chuck them in a group home? Like, what are you going to do? Okay? And that's been my thing with the evangelical Christians lately, right? Which is to just go, well, I'm so glad that you've offered to foster care. Yeah, exactly. What's your solution? Is it to give people enough income and support so that they can be, good parents, so that, all of these things, like a lot of these things are economic, but also if you're not sort of thinking about the solutions, and this has been my frustration, the same thing with Twitter, same thing with, this whole Balnciaga thing. If all you're doing is sitting there getting fucking upset about a high fashion shoot, and like something that was just a misfire in an ad, okay? And advertising can be art, it can be creative, okay? And you're off in conspiracy town, okay? It's a sign to dial it back. So it means that, declaration. First of all, child protection worker. I worked on site, okay, in a one-to-one foster care program, which was the hardest to place. The kids whose placements would break down over and over and over again, they were the victims of the most egregious abuse, and my job was to help train those foster parents, okay? I know what real abuse looks like. I know what I know what it really looks like, okay? Also, I've been a victim of that of that sort of thing as well. Okay, I also happen to have had a neighbour who was a pedophile and he hung himself in his stairwell. So I'm pretty well across the issues on this stuff. Okay, my neighbour, I think when you sort of grow up in poverty, I suppose, or in, state housing or whatever, obviously you get more experience with the more vulnerable members of the community, and that includes people, abusers, and abusers are often abused, and I often think about, because that was, obviously I won't talk too much about that out of respect, but, there was a human there and he was nice to me, okay? He was a pedophile, okay? He wasn't into girls, I didn't know, okay? We only found out when he was diddling. Even I lived next door to him. I hung out with him. I hung out with the other kid. I had no idea, okay? And we were sitting there hanging out, and he was just nice. Just my nice neighbour. He hung out. We had a laugh and play video games and shit, okay? And I only found out when, it came to light with everybody else. And my grandma told me, because my grandma was friends with his mum as well, what had happened. And I was there when they were pulling his body out of his townhouse. Like, that's, he was in a lot of distress. But, was he a bad person? Was he, if you're thinking, yes, burn them all, then you're not really thinking. You're thinking, things are complex, okay? And if you can, and just because you empathize with a human being doesn't mean that you're condoning or supporting the behavior. And also, if you think that a photo shoot of a fucking teddy bear with some leather on it is even remotely close to the kinds of things that I've seen, then and you're going to equate those two things, then there's something wrong with you. You haven't seen real child abuse, Okay. A lot of this stuff is a sort of middle class idea of what the threat is, moral panic. Okay. This imaginary thing that isn't backed by data. Okay. So okay, here we go. Thoughts on Kanye. Well, I did actually do, if you go to my YouTube channel, this is coming from Twitch, so if you go to my YouTube channel, I do have some thoughts on Kanye before. This was just, when did I talk about that? Oh, that was with the DEFCON tweet. So I was a little bit like, well, obviously, understanding what it's clearly a severe manic episode. I mean, I'm not a mental health professional, not a licensed mental health professional that can diagnose. That said, I have seen enough of these things in a professional capacity and in my life to know that that's a full-blown fucking manic episode. Now, a lot of the people, again, I think this comes back to the blue check, actually. It will come back to that. And the whole Elon Musk thing, which is that selective information and how people will use versions of the truth, but also sort of use little disclaimers to get out of the fact that they're just not empathizing and they're actually just trying to justify their own. It's very, very, very difficult for people to see that we are, much like when you're doing, class analysis. For the middle class to see that they are closer to the homeless dude on the street than they are to Bill Gates or Jeff Bezos, that kind of thing. It's very uncomfortable to feel that vulnerable, okay? It's also, the same thing with someone like Kanye West, who's incredibly successful, lucky, yes, but very talented, okay? Had everything. And I think it's very confronting for people to have to look at the idea that you are really only, one mental break away from just completely fucking ending in that position. Now, obviously, he's quite a unique case in the fact that, again, I'm in two minds. I am of the view that I shouldn't have to say that what he's saying is ridiculous, okay, and horrific. But I'm also going to defend art, okay? This is the thing. It's like I'm just getting you thinking. We're walking in tender area and part of my job is to sort of short circuit your lizard brain and start to get you empathizing a little more, okay? Not sympathizing with his views, empathizing with the person. And that was, unfortunately, the twisted point that he was trying to make, which he shouldn't have done, and nobody should do. There comes a point where, if you killed a couple of people, you shouldn't really be pointing out their good side. I think that's a thing. But we can also, again, we can unpack a lot of it. My thoughts on him is he's clearly in a full-blown episode. I try to live my life thinking that if the worst-case scenario were to happen, would I be okay with how I conducted myself at the time? I am being empathetic because I also happen to know that what goes up must come down. The nature of this episode is long. It seems to have been going for months now. He's got an untreated, severe manic episode happening. And the thing is that at some point that's going to crash. And so there's going to come a point where that all comes crashing. And I also think I'm, again, the daughter of an addict. Grew up with a lot of shit in my life as well. I think of his kids, okay? I grew up watching my dad drink himself to death. I grew up watching my dad get sober and fall off the wagon and get on and off and on and off and on and off. My dad died trying to quit drinking because he quit cold turkey. It killed him, okay? That's been my life. And so I always think it doesn't matter no money in the world can protect you from tragedy like that, okay? And when it comes to, I know that it's easy to be mad at billionaires. It's easy to be mad at rich people. It's justified. There's lots of reasons. But when it comes to that truth, I think what's uncomfortable for people is the fact that this is going to end and it's going to end badly. He's going to come crashing down. And I think that just thinking for a second, he's going to have to face the consequences at some point of what he's done and said, and he's going to You know, like, yes, I'm not saying that you know, I can see how I've said, you know, my previous stream talked about this, but you can see in a manic sense how he got there. I don't agree with how he got there. I'm saying we can go through and, you know, reverse engineer the steps that he's taken over the years, you know, his life, his various experiences, you know, the whole divorce thing, you know, kids. Always think of how his kids feel about this, watching their dad self-destruct. That's all. You hate me and my beliefs. Okay, cool. You can do that then. Go for it. Imagine having a horrible worldview, like everyone has a story and everyone, you know, deserves compassion and kindness. I mean, imagine that. And also being based in fact and evidence, which is the fact that this manic episode is going to crash. Imagine that. I'm a terrible person. If you hate me, then, you know, you've obviously not got much to do because I haven't done anything. You maybe reserve your hate for people who actually, you know, actually deserve it. So anyway, I don't know if you mean it, or I'm not sure because, you know, it's Twitch and also irony and caps. So it's hard to know, you know, hard to know if it's ironic caps or not. But, you know, let's just err on the side of serious because everyone's so brain broken. So anyway, so my thoughts about Kanye are complicated, and everyone's thoughts should be. My thoughts on Elon Musk are complicated. My thoughts on everything is complicated because I fucking read and because I know what I'm talking about and because I have lived experience with mental illness, with these sort of situations. And a lot of people just, you know, much like they use sort of critique of Elon Musk as a, you know, they use the billionaire thing to dunk on the weirdo autist. You can just tell there's a whole cheerleader energy to this whole thing as well, which is that, you know, hang on, let me just look at this. This looks like we got a live one. Sorry, I hate everything you say and I have so little to do that I'm watching this shit after work. Kanye is always right. What? Okay. You seem well. Okay. All right. So that's your second chance to make sense. So, and then I'll just mute. So it's again, part of what I do with my audience is that I take an issue that everyone is lizard-brained with and reacting and angry and scared and afraid and all of those normal things, confused, okay? And I take their goodness and I get them to try and think and try to, you know, be better, not just be lizard-brained twitch fuck. So thank you. I drink a lot of milk and liberal tears. Okay, so we've got a genius. A genius has entered the chat. Okay, so yeah, I know. It's all right. It's fun. It's funny. I'm going on a rather large channel full of people like this at some point, so, you know, I'm used to it. It's not a problem. Okay, so I think that someone needs a timeout. Let's just put him in timeout for a bit. There we go. There we go. So, it's my free speech. You don't like free speech. Oh my God, Elon, change it. Oh gosh, these people. Anyway, you can't save everyone, guys. So, but I can try to appeal to you and show that, you know, like, you don't have to give infinite chances, okay? Like I said, you can only be, you know, held to. You can only be put up with so much, okay? You don't need to be like people in cults, right? You can only one of the when you're trying to get people who are, you know, in a cult out of a cult, a big part of it is just being patient. And it's not going to happen. It takes a long time. Sometimes it never happens, okay? And sometimes if it's like a family member or a child of yours or whatever, sometimes all you can do is just be patient and loving, but you've also got to look after yourself and set boundaries. Like that's just, you know, that's sort of deprogramming 101. Like, So, oh yeah, okay. So Tim King said, for some reason, the new Twitter Blue option isn't available for you. Yes, because, so back to Twitter Blue. So I name my videos things and then talk about whatever I feel like talking about. But yeah, so the Twitter Blue thing, it was open for a few days. It was only open in the US, Canada, Japan, and Australia, I believe. Me being Australian and being on top of things, I was already a Twitter Blue subscriber anyway, so I just updated and got in, and then he turned it off sort of 3 days in when they had all of that sort of, the debacle. But it'll be back on. It'll be back on soon, I'm sure. But I got in. So yes, so back to that. So with the check mark, with my previous video, I talked about the check mark. And it's sort of, obviously those who seem to think that paying for Twitter is a bad idea seem to really, really not want to get rid of that check mark. They really, really like it. And if you're on Twitter and you're using the app, you may have noticed that you've got the verified tab now. So I knew about it because obviously I've seen it before. But most people became aware that, how as a normal Twitter user, you have just been, they turned it off and cancelled your subscription. Okay. Is that, okay, what were you up to? What mischief were you up to? That's okay, yeah. Okay, that's cool. I'd be interested to know what happened there because I slip under the radar always. I slipped under the radar when it came to being shadow banned and censorship because I was sort of mass reported. I've always sort of just, I sit in the cracks always, right? But it might have just been because you were like talking about crypto or some shit. I know that they went hard on some things. Or did you change your name? That's usually what, because I don't do any of that. So I qualified for my blue check in, was 2010, 2011. When they first brought it out, I qualified for it and then I didn't bother. But then I got salty because I wasn't, they changed the requirements and then closed it all together. And then when it came back on, it was obviously, unattainable. Like I'd been on TV and all that sort of stuff. So I was able to, but I never got my blue check. So I felt entitled to it. So that's part of the reason why I'm like, yeah. Anyway. Okay, so I received an email telling me that they were ending Twitter Blue subs in lieu of the new setup. Okay, interesting. Okay, well, because you had a legacy one, didn't you, before? If you're the Tim King that I think you are, maybe. Anyway, okay. Anyway, so you may have noticed, like, if you're a normal user, like, you may have realized why you might not actually be, yes, probably were also shadow banned to a degree. I'm going to explain some of that. And I will also, I noticed that Matt Taibbi dropped a new thread on some of this stuff. So I'm just going to, I'll go through that in real time. Okay. Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah, so I just missed the boat. I just didn't think I had my opportunity to get my blue check, and then I just never bothered. And then when it became a thing, when I was being because I went viral and I had an AVO out, and I was getting threats, and I had a stalker and that sort of stuff. They had then closed, and then I was like, oh shit, I should probably get verified. They closed it and decided that that was when it just sort of kicked in. They stopped. Suddenly, Twitter stopped answering my emails. And then I just lost interest in Twitter after that. And then I sort of came back in 2017. And then, the rest is sort of, history, where I was talking about certain issues. And then, lo and behold, suddenly I realized we weren't allowed to talk about certain things anymore. And I've always done the right thing, I swear. But, But anyway, I'll talk about that with the Twitter files in a minute. Yeah. So there's a few of those people like me and you as well, where we're just kind of we're old school users. We're legit. We've always just used the internet the same way. And like I have my own sort of brand. Okay, hate using that, but that's true. Everyone's got a brand. But my particular style is shouty, sweary, Australian, ironic, silly. Okay. That kind of stuff, right? A little bit crass, makes a bit of fun, right? Doing the stuff that you're not supposed to do, like pushing limits. That's kind of what I do. So I've always just operated there, and it was never a problem. I've never really engaged in harassment. Okay, even in the early days when I was more involved in sort of snarkier communities, and I was even I when there was a pylon, I was never there. I was usually the recipient of the pylon, and because I had been the recipient of the pylon and have been stalked over the years and have, attracted sort of various weirdos over my life, and also having worked with, some celebrities who have attracted weirdos and, super fans and stuff, I'm very mindful of, how it feels to be on the receiving end of certain things online, right? Like the all caps Twitch guy, that was going to escalate. I know it was going to escalate into just stupid shit. Okay, so I just block them. Like I can, it's not being unreasonable. It's just I know where it ends. Okay, been around long enough to know where this goes. Okay, again, patterns. Okay, like I can, how you can tell a bot or how you can tell something's coordinated, even if they're not saying exactly the same words. You can tell if there's coordination. It's just a trained eye. It's just trained eye stuff. Okay. But, obviously a trained eye goes, yeah, this is what it is. If it's possible, then they're probably doing it. That's another thing, okay? One thing, it's a rule around the internet is that if it's possible, someone's doing it, okay? It's not just rule 34, but it's also rule, like if there's a loophole, someone will exploit that loophole, okay? So if I know how to do a certain type of campaign, that means someone's definitely doing that type campaign. So if I see what I expect to see out of that type of campaign, I can extrapolate and assume that those things are there, even if technically they're sort of operating inside the rules and inside the bounds with plausible deniability. Like it's just like a lot of these things are very good at looking like a coincidence. That's what organized crime and, these kinds of things make, astroturfing and those sorts of things, really good astroturfing. Okay, and PR, they're in the business of making things look like a coincidence. Okay, like a lot of these things will, repeated exposure to things like, like try to trip up your availability heuristic and your availability bias so that, certain things keep coming up with repetition, because the more that something is repeated, this is 101 advertising, the more that something is repeated, you tend to have a more positive view of that thing, okay? So the more that it is, and this is obviously the counter view, okay, of, having Kanye West on there, which is, and the mere act of talking about these things, some of the criticism is that what you do is when you sort of, the Netanyahu thing is fucking hilarious. That was just so ridiculous. And you go, okay, that's mental illness, but it's also kind of like art. There's again, that's that sort of, we can appreciate that. We're allowed to appreciate that, okay? I'm giving you permission to laugh at something that is funny. I'm giving you permission to, it's just don't be a fucking downer all the time. There is a difference between saying the thing, joking about the thing, talking about the thing, okay? Or even, there's been many court rulings, and again, I try not to be letter of the law person, but, the legal rulings are good in the sense that they are built in to interpret the law in both the dictionary definition of the law and the spirit of the law. That's like the rules of the golden rule of statutory interpretation is that, which is what did they mean? What was the context of that law? And was there a breach of that law, right? This is it's okay if your intentions are good and something is objectively funny and horrifying and horrific, to have fun and laugh at it, okay? And to get mad at people for merely going, okay, let's say, let's break this down from outside. Let's try to get out of our fucking lizard brain. Let's get off the fucking, those balls of water. I don't know what they're called. I need to figure out what they're called. But those ball lick, the hamsters, the water thing with the ball. And everyone's like that with these issues. They're like trans people. Nazis. Everyone's just licking their ball. And it's like, at the end of the day, that's a really like bad place to be in. You're still in a cage. Okay? In that case, you're a literal cage, sitting there on a dopamine drip. Like, that's not how I want to live my life. Or a cortisol drip, or fucking adrenaline, or oxytocin. Okay. One thing about, everyone focuses on dopamine, but they also don't focus on oxytocin and the role that parasocial relationships play in, all of these things, these blind spots and these, biological realities that kick in, these are all being hijacked by bad guys all the time. And this is my frustration. I started to talk about this before my stream got cut off, this so-called left-wing independent media, like the big guys, like, the big left-wing independents, like, Young Turks, Majority Report, Vaush, Hassan, those sorts. Vaush and Hassan are a bit different because they're kind of solo operators, right? But when you've got, people who like a team, Young Turk, Ethan Klein, those sort of bigger, fucking that surfs guy, fuck that guy. God, what a prick. Anyway, but again, you can get a sense of whether someone's a good person or a bad person just on how much they enjoy being cruel. Like, that's not something that your politics can dictate. Like, if there is a sadistic element. You can see and again, when you've lived the life I've lived, I can tell very, very easily who's a good guy and who's a bad guy, who deserves. I'm not sitting there defending the Nazis, okay? I'm not defending anyone. In fact, I'm just stating facts, okay, which is bipolar presents in a certain way. Unmedicated bipolar presents pretty much like that, okay? Yes, he holds these beliefs, but how do people get these beliefs? He's been radicalized much like anybody else, but bipolar is much like all these other fucks. Okay, I've seen the Rad Fem to QAnon pipeline fucking operate at warp speed in the last 2 years. People who were completely fucking, Marxist feminists 2 years ago, which I think was also an identity, because if you're a real Marxist and a real feminist, you don't go to the right. But anyway, I've watched this nudge, and I think people really don't understand how that combination of bad actors, thought-terminating cliches, and that sort of, those tactics, those cult tactics, dishonest media, okay, even on the left, like the Young Turks, I've watched them and Majority Report, just leave out the truth, completely, deliberately leave out, like, things. And I said this, I think, before I got cut off, which was I don't normally comment on YouTube videos. I don't read my YouTube comments either. I like mental health, my thing. I don't like to be that hamster, right? So if you want to contact me, you contact me via email or on Twitter or whatever. I just don't need that shit in my life, okay? But I did actually comment on Young Turk's video 2 days ago, because I actually just said to them, it's like, you can critique Elon Musk without lying. There's plenty you can do. You can actually critique them in an honest way. And you can also, I'm somewhat like I've said before, I'm mixed on Elon Musk in general, okay? I don't trust him, but I think he does good. I think he means well. He's, like most people mean what they're saying in the moment, but then, things change. People are complicated, okay? And I think that anybody who, again, this is our psychology. We tend to think that our motivations and the things when we're bad to people or we do bad things, that's for lots of different reasons, and it's complicated and it's systemic, and I'm just poor and blah blah blah. But if someone else does it, then you tend to blame the individual, okay? And that is, again, there's a cultural aspect to that in America, particularly with that Puritan work ethic, which is that if you are poor, that it is your fault. That is a moral failing on your part. It's not a structural problem. The blaming of the individual, the hyper-individual culture that is the United States, we've got that here too. But, this idea that these messages that are drummed into people, okay, that everything, your failure is your fault. Your failure is your fault. Your successes are yours, okay? There was no luck. There's nothing. There's no culture. It's all either reduced down to biology and merit. It's like, no, that's not that simple. Lots of things are true at once. And we can agree that this is bad. Okay. Anti-Semitism, bad. Okay. I know, again, I have a mixed view on that too, which is that I personally think that if you start to defend yourself and put yourself on the back foot about that, it comes off as defensive. Like, I think it's obvious that that's a horrible thing, okay? However, I also had a few people, because, after defending Kiwi Farms, I sort of picked up a few of the sort of, guys from defending that, like as followers and stuff. And a few of them were actually needing to be told that that's bad, what he's saying is bad. Because I had someone, again, not singling out anyone in particular, but, they were saying that Kanye, was taken out of context, that he was mostly talking about Christianity, that, it's just another smear campaign, that he's not sick. He is sick, okay? And I'm not licensed to diagnose, but I had been around it enough to say this is a pretty open shut case, okay? The behaviour is completely manic, okay? And I'm not worried about what he's going to say next. I'm worried about what's going to happen when that mania ends, because it does end, okay? And that's horrible. But anyway, so think of the children. Think of his children, okay? They might be rich. They might be wealthy. They might have a lot of privilege, okay? But at the same time, they're still kids seeing their dad self-destruct. Okay, money doesn't. I know that there's people who think that money fixes everything, and it really doesn't. Money, like I said, money is not enough money to live is good, but beyond a certain point, you just can't. It doesn't shield you from a lot of things, but it doesn't shield you from trauma like that. Okay, and I think that's where, I think that it's just uncomfortable for people to see. Again, I always push this sort of principle of charity, principle of humanity, and to understand that everyone gets to a certain point, and this is part of clinical training too. If you're sort of training in social work, or you're training, the first thing you do is a genogram. The first thing you do is ask them about their childhood. The first thing you do, and depending on what your discipline is, okay, you ask a series of questions to try and figure out how they got to this point. Okay, so someone presents in a emergency setting or an acute setting, you go, okay, well, what happened? What events led up to this? And, this is no different, okay? Any event. And just because you don't like it, it doesn't mean that someone who's sitting there trying to ask the questions to try and diagnose, because you can't solve a thing unless you can diagnose it correctly, okay? It needs, it's just, there's no point just screaming at people that, like, I don't understand. And again, maybe it's just because I'm more of a solution-oriented person. But I also want you to be thinking about solutions. Because when we're talking about, these things about children and children being in danger, and, someone should protect the kids, okay? Or these teachers. Okay, so what's the next step with that? Is it to pay teachers more? So that, is it to, have there's so many different areas, okay? Because obviously when teachers aren't paid very much, it's left for young, blue-haired, fucking no degree, people who wouldn't, like most people wouldn't bother working in the education system. I wouldn't. I couldn't. I fucking couldn't be a teacher. Fuck that shit. I had 3 kids. I don't want to be a teacher. Fuck that shit. But what's the next step? What's the ask? You can be mad all you want. If you're mad, you're just a hamster. You're just sitting there going, dopamine, please. Cortisol, please. Adrenaline, please. Oxidation. Oh, some oxytocin. Oh, I love you. Cortisol, please. Like that. Is that a life? Or are you trying to figure out a way out of the cage so you can be free? It's like, okay. And the problem is that a lot of people are sitting in the cage, sucking on that fucking water bowl, whatever the fuck it's called. Someone figure out the name for me. I've got to look it up. But the fucking cage door could be open. But you're too busy and too jacked up on fucking all these, on that ball, that you can't even see that the door to the cage is open half the time. And that you could actually just get out if you wanted. And that's the thing. It's like, okay, well, where's your focus? I'm mixing my metaphors here, but that's okay. Anyway. Disclaimer, I had to take painkillers. So, Twitter Blue. So normie users would notice that there's the verified tab appeared. Okay, so from user experience point of view, let's reverse engineer that. So what you think may have been shadow banning may have actually also just been the verified tab. Now, the more paranoid among us might think that that's, how dare they do such a thing? Like, it doesn't change how I use Twitter, right? I still use filters. I still have it on, and depending on my workload and, what kind of tedious argument I'm in or whatever, I tend to I've always just look at most of the things anyway, okay? Just because I can't fucking help myself. But the verified tab, imagine if you've got 100,000 followers that are all replying, then that's a way for sort of, to get some sort of, like a signal to noise. Like, there's a lot of noise. Now, unfortunately, if you don't have a blue check, congratulations, you're the noise. We know this, okay? It's something that intuitively we know to be true. Now, this links to, so it's not so much, so yes, there are a number of different things in the user experience that may lead you to the conclusion that you are being suppressed, okay? Because you're not getting a lot of engagement. Now, a lot of my engagement disappeared because I was left behind without a blue check and I was a target of mass reporting, okay? It wasn't necessarily because of active conscious suppression on Twitter. I'm not important enough. Like, no one gives a fuck about me at Twitter. Okay. The only thing that I can see that may be an issue is that I'm somehow sort of flagged in their CRM as I've written an article about this, why wrong thinkers are shouting into the void. In my case, it's because I tend to be a connector and a Pied Piper and influential that I'm probably flagged as someone who's, likely to spread, because every time when I'm unthrottled, I can go viral very easily. I've done it before. It's something I knew how to do. That's something to, it's not conscious. This is just what the signals around me and my data set. They know that I've got a history of being able to just go whoop, bang, whoop, bang. It's somewhat predictable. So obviously if I am associated with certain accounts, especially all of the fucking radfems that I followed back, who, started getting worse and worse and worse in their behavior, but then also went full Q and also went, into all this sort of conspiracy town, how I might be seen as, flagged as a risk in terms of limiting reach. Like, I somewhat agree with that, okay? I understand it because I'm not a fucking loser who's sitting there blaming everyone else for everything all the time and actually thinking things through and trying to diagnose and go, okay, well, how do we get here? Even for myself, I'm not sitting there going, oh, it's a persecution thing. I think it's just a combination of different things that have, I always end up in the sort of, that nexus of the intersection of those things. But the verified tab, you can see how that would be useful from a user experience point of view for somebody, who is verified and copying a lot of shit. Twitter's extremely unpleasant. So, having that, opening that up for everybody is actually really cool, because what I think that is a gesture of transparency from Elon Musk. To just show it's like, well, rather than gaslighting you and having you feel paranoid, especially if you're like just the psychology of something like the verified tab. This is why I've been so shouty about the ethics and the decisions around. A lot of this stuff is about transparency, because what Twitter have done with these sort of tools, it's not that the tool itself or the experience itself is bad or a bad idea. They're actually quite good solutions. I'm sure that because I tend to reply fuck off every so often, I get that little pop-up. It's like, are you sure you want to do that? People don't like that. That's a little nudge, okay? That's something that says, are you sure? Like something, free speech. I should be able to say whatever I want to anyone I want and be a cunt. No, you shouldn't. Those nudges are not, they're there to help you. Like the suspensions, initially the way these processes were designed was, that you get a warning. You go, naughty step, much like you train a fucking puppy or a toddler or a MAGA person or somebody who's arguing about politics on Twitter with political scientists, for example. These things exist to help you for the most part. Like I think I've talked about these before, where some of these things are implemented with, a benevolent intent. So the verified tab is obviously there to, improve the experience of people who are, high traffic, high volume users, people who tend, advertisers, people who tend to spend money on the platform. They can connect and they can use the verified tab a bit more like LinkedIn, right? And that's pretty cool. Like that's a good feature. But what they did was leave your average unverified users thinking, especially young kids, because again, teenagers are sort of very intense, like the intense fandom stuff tends to sort of, peak at around, in the teenage years and sort of drop off, in your 20s. But, young users of Twitter who are sort of talking to their favorite celebrities or, trying to, and never getting a reply or never getting any engagement or anything, that will fuck with their heads a bit in the sense that they will feel like it's personal because they don't know that that verified tab exists. They think that that person, has filters on like their experience. So that, it's like, well, okay, most people would have it like, some people would have only up, the filters. So that again, it has a purpose. It's a good idea. Because, once you get to a certain point, like even pre me being throttled when my engagement just went, like it was becoming difficult to manage, even at the, like, I don't know how many followers I've got, but, whatever small thousands I've got in followers now, it becomes very difficult to manage. Like I open my DMs because I'm trying to get people who are part of engagement pods to sort of, tell me like about them and try to get there. Anyway, but I open up my DMs and just you bots all the time. You just keep getting spam all the time. You just keep reporting and keep reporting and keep reporting, and that just trains the AI to sort of detect a bit earlier. But this is tricky stuff. But you can't have an experience that is, no one's going to use it. And that's where it's really funny because so that, that verified tab is good. But again, the lack of transparency around it is the thing that causes the psychological harm and the paranoia around things like shadow banning. Okay. And it's the same thing with mass reporting. Like there's a clear loophole here. Twitter had no process for this, which was I am being mass reported by bad actors. Okay. I want that. Like with LinkedIn, you can do that. You can contact LinkedIn, mostly because you can pay for LinkedIn. But, if you pay for LinkedIn Premium, you get an account manager. You can contact their support and you can go, because I've spent money with LinkedIn over the years, they can see that I'm, I bought, I used to run LinkedIn ads on behalf of clients and all that sort of stuff. And when I was in-house, runs quite expensive campaigns. So those are all attached to my account. So they can see that over time I have a, consistent, good pattern of behavior. And once a human looks at it, they see that I swear, but they don't give a shit, okay? But it trips up the AI because you've got sort of me telling dudes to fuck off and whatever, and they report you, and then you get, you trip up the algorithm, right? LinkedIn has a process. Twitter had no process for that. And so what it does is it leaves you paranoid. So what you're doing is you're sort of, you're reaching out and you're trying to, think about like what I was saying with in the pandemic, right? Where, some of our celebrities and stuff were, we looked to them for leadership when we were sort of not feeling the love for our, leaders. Not that you should ever love leaders anyway. You should never trust anybody. You should always make sure that they work for you, not the other way around, right? That's anybody who's a fan of politicians should just, calm their fucking, slow their jets, man, because, no. But, think about the pandemic where, and this was, I can revisit that shit with J.K. Rowling, but part of the reason where she misstepped was that there were a lot of people who were very, traumatized, grieving, were still recovering from the trauma. Like no one's really talking about the fucking fear and trauma that everyone went through and lived through and were expected to just pick up and move on when, like people aren't okay. Like some haven't made it back. Okay. And I this, I know this, there's at least a handful of people in everyone's like circles that have just not come out okay. And we're not really doing much to address that. But those, if you are sort of shadow banned, you're not getting the same interaction that you are locked in your house. Online is your only social connection, which it was for a lot of people. I'm used to that. Like, I lived online, my business was online, I'm international. I was set up for, I was largely unimpacted by the pandemic. Okay. I'm lucky like that. But there's a lot of people who were just looking for some oxytocin. Okay. They were looking for some, they were looking for, virtual hugs, and they were looking for support. And, part of that would be to reach out and form a sort of parasocial bond with their favorite musicians or their celebrity or, whatever. Okay. So when they've got a blue check and you're reaching out to them and they're just ghosting you, that's just another something. That's just someone else. It's just more and more abandonment, more and more ghosting. And again, someone who is in something like the throes of a manic episode or depression or anxiety or, something like that. Okay, or just a perfectly understandable trauma response, which is what most people are going through. Those trauma responses can manifest in an episode, okay, which is sort of where we're going with, we're going to be seeing quite a few psychotic breaks in the next, I reckon, again, not a psychologist, not a registered psychologist, studying psychology, that's it. But can you see that when you actually start to unpick it and you go, okay, well, the verified tab, yes, it was intended as to improve the experience of people, but the ethical decision making, the lack of ethical design decisions, okay, that were made here, which was not considering the mental health and well-being of your everyday user who is trying to interact with their celebrity, that might have been their last sort of resort. You know how you feel when someone that you admire sees your tweet or likes you or whatever or acknowledges you. Okay, that's I'm a little more jaded. I tend to not get starstruck by these things, but I have moments where I go, whoo. I'll talk about that in a minute. Actually, that's pretty funny. Hang on, Gravely. Joel, can you fill my soda water for me, please? Sorry. But that's the difference between going, okay, so you go, well, okay, what? Elon did that. That's a good call. They should have opened that up. That should have always been open. It should have been clear that, there's, again, having better comms around these things is usually the answer. Having somebody who can actually explain things and sit on podcasts and explain these things, okay? Rather than say that you get, Twitter blue, you get priority in the algorithm. Now, the bad actors are always going to say, well, yeah, that means you got to pay to be seen on Twitter. It's like, no, he meant the verified tab, okay? Problem is that he's a terrible communicator, absolutely terrible communicator, and I don't know why people let him fucking do that. Why do they let Kanye on fucking TV? There's just, you can't help someone who doesn't want to be helped, right? Anyway, but if he had clearly said, because he's, talking again, because he speaks my language, so I understand what his intentions are. I can understand that he wants transparency. And making the verified tab public is a really good indicator of that. That's a signal that you may not have thought about that actually brings some of this stuff to the surface. And it's the same thing with these Twitter files, which were, actually I'll talk about. So the check mark, right? So I've had it for a month now. I've always had Twitter Blue. I actually initially bought Twitter Blue because I thought that maybe I'd get a little boost in the algorithm, or it might be some sort of, quasi verification process anyway. It wasn't, but I've been paying for Twitter Blue mostly because I oppose the advertising model and always have. And so if you're not willing to pay for it, then, or sell people's data, then you get ads, and then you end up with censorship. It's not so much the platforms, it's the ads. It's the, it's the big corporate interests. It's fucking Pfizer and Procter and Gamble and Eli Lilly and all those fucking people, okay? They're the people that are censoring you because you're not brand friendly. It's not necessarily, it's convenient that it's also the US government, but it's mostly, and that's what some of these Twitter files are showing, that it's somewhat benign, to be honest. That, a lot of this stuff is just comms, like calling an account manager, contacting an account manager, trying your luck, and now the thing is that the blame firmly goes on Twitter employees, right, for acting in biased ways. Like the fact that, I mean, again, I told you I worked in child protection, but what they do with the records in government departments is that they make sure that you can only access, certain parts of the business. Okay, so and that was, if you'd listened to Elon Musk's space on this, the one where he joked about being Epstein's, where he, it doesn't matter. Anyway, I'll move on. Oh, I can't remember what I was going to say. If I was going to say something and you were curious, just let me know and I'll answer. But again, you just see that these things were all just that's something that you could actually just say, okay, well, if I'm talking to an expert in UX, if anyone was interested in hearing a go, well, the verified tab is proof that it's a gesture of integrity and transparency. He's trying to make it more transparent. What can you say? The fact that he's tweeting all this stuff is he's trying to do transparency, and he's also trying to do lean UX development, okay? So in lean product management, there's a whole thing. I can explain that, which is that you just constantly iterate, okay? It's risky. It's never really been done so normally when you have like a business transformation project, you would not do it like this. Usually, he's dealing with sort of, legacy code, legacy, like all of this stuff. He's got, a lot of scrutiny, the things hemorrhaging money, all of these problems, and he's sort of, he's innovating in plain sight and sort of, transforming in baby steps. And he's going to fuck that up. Like it's not so much Rex. Again, this is just where I think a lot of these, I don't like the word shitlib, but I'm just going to use it. But your majority ports and your TYTs and all, this is where they show their loyalty to corporate culture. They show their lack of understanding around tech. They show their lack of experience and insight into different ways of approaching things. And they are just as reactionary as they claim everybody else is, because when in a tech environment, what he's doing is actually quite positive, okay? He's just not doing it, in their world, it would be you have to do everything measured and responsible and corporate and follow procedure, like they're basically fucking hall monitors, right? This has been interesting. This whole issue has been really revealing when you understand the psychology of these things and how they sort of, interact with each other, and how, first of all, clueless they are about tech, but also like really deep, sort of slippage and how deep to their core people reveal themselves in the end, if you're really paying attention. Like I said before about, people who have that little flicker in the eye when they're, being nasty to somebody. And they do it under the guise of sort of billionaire hate, or they do it under the guise of, social justice, or they do it, but they're still just, there's something in them that there's a sadistic component to what they're doing. And that's something that, again, I think if you are familiar with some of the gender stuff, you'll see that misogyny, that using these issues as a cover for their own like utter hatred of women and their resentment of women and, all that sort of stuff. And, the other thing that I've talked about before with that whole dynamic with Emma Watson and J.K. Rowling is that, that dynamic, that mother-daughter dynamic, okay, that, like women, women who have not really dealt with the fact that they just resent their mothers for working, but they hide it. Again, this is just, and again, when you look at the data around millennials, that millennials are a lot more conservative than, Gen X politically and in terms of lifestyle, that they don't drink as much. I mean, I don't know whether that's the case anymore, but they're a lot more conservative. They're a lot more like boomers than they care to admit. I'm Gen X. I'm saying, this is just, again, numbers, stats, obviously. Stop making everything personal. I'm a millennial, therefore nothing you say is true. No, that's not how it works. I'm a man, therefore nothing you say is true. No, that's not how it works. I have a business, therefore capitalism is great. No, it's not how it works. Facts matter. Truth matters. Okay? There's things that are true. And mostly true. And you just because you have a different anecdote doesn't change the sort of broader trends over time or the broader sort of material analysis that is being done. It's not personal, for fuck's sake. Everything's so fucking narcissistic. But anyway, so I'm probably waffling. Let me have a see. But again, you see that with play out with Elon Musk, which is like the popular kids who were, you can tell that they get that little bit of, again, when you're a keen people watcher, as I am, you see that flicker in the eye that's like, oh, they fucking love the fact that this billionaire, he is a billionaire because they get to rail on the weirdo and the weird kid, okay, or the nerd, and they get to go do some nerd punching, and they hide it under like this, billionaire critique stuff, but it's pretty obvious what's going on. And it's the same thing with, again, this is a way to think, which is that I go, well, if economics is a big part of it, okay, I've had to go through this myself over the years, which is like, not just, and it's not to gaslight. It's not like this toxic positivity to try and gaslight you and get you to ignore your critiques. But what it is to try and go, okay, so what I would do, like in the case of someone like, I think I touched on this before, 3 streams ago or so, 2 streams ago, about how if you're only seeing it through one lens, like billionaire bad, you're not really, you got to be willing to come at things from multiple different angles. And what I like to do is take that criticism away. So yes, have the critique, go, okay, billionaire bad, economic, whatever, exploitation. You can't be a billionaire. There's no such thing as a self-made millionaire, blah, 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 blah. Okay? All that boring fucking stuff. But what I like to do, just for fun, because I like self-torture, okay, because I love hurting myself, and I like feeling all the feelings, and, I like to, it's easy to be angry all the time. That's the easy part. It's easy to be a victim. It's easy to it's really difficult to, be confident enough in yourself to show up to a stream and empathize with Kanye right now, or to, defend Balnciaga, which I might do as, art. Again, there's the part that's obviously wrong when you're reacting in your lizard brain, obviously. Okay. I also need to make sure that I qualify it, because there are people who will think, because everyone's broken and brain broken, that I am taking a side, which I'm not. I'm merely moving beyond that to step 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, toward a solution, toward an actual real accurate diagnosis of the problem. Okay. It's easy to fucking cut out a gallbladder. You got gallstones, cut it out. Might bleed to death, but it's rare. Most people have that handled. Let people handle that part. I like to look at systemic disease and try to diagnose complex things where the symptoms are subtle, okay? And these are, it's a different game, okay? Yes, being sick, bad. What else have you got, okay? See what I'm saying? Being sick is bad. Okay, cool. What kind of sick? All right. How simple is it to fix? Okay, well, I'm going go fix that. Go fix the gallbladder. That's not my concern. My concern is over here. Complex stuff, the hard stuff, the difficult things, okay? And and this is not me turning around and saying you should write a 7-page essay quibbling about fucking the difference between, different hair splitting things. That's actually just a red herring, and that's a distraction as well. That's just another way of avoiding actually doing any work. So for me, what I do is I take all of those things and I go, okay, well, let's just take the billionaire out of this for 5 seconds. Okay? And think about his daughter. What's the most human thing that you can do? Okay? Let's think about, let's do thought experiments. Think about lots of potential scenarios, okay? And go, okay, well, what's most likely? And where can I give credit? And this is my frustration. This is where I started with the whole, blue check media, okay? How would we know who's telling the truth? How would we know who's legit and who's telling the truth and who's lying? I don't know. Everyone who's saying that there's nothing good about what Elon Musk is doing with Twitter. There's, or that it's all good and all great. Okay. It's called being human. He's trying. Okay. He's doing his best. I assume everyone's doing their best. But anyway. But, the media, like all the check marks that are like, yeah, they're billionaire, bad. 4 legs, good. 2 legs, bad. 4 legs, good. 2 legs, bad. Billionaire, bad. Cortisol, please. It's like, no, okay, well. Verified tab. Let's zoom in. Verified tab, good idea. How is it a bad idea? Well, here's the ethical problem I have with it for ordinary users, because it might have this impact on mental health. Okay, problem to solve there. Again, when you're talking about user experience design, this is what I did for my job for years, okay, which is focus on individual feature, how it might benefit the user, how it might harm the user, how you can help, ethically, of course, achieve, some synergy between those competing interests and create a good experience that people want to use and return to. Obviously, that's been manipulated and used over the years, but it is what it. That's you focus on that thing, one feature, one button, A/B test it, okay, and not being transparent about that is the theme with tech, okay. Not telling people that you're spying on them and giving them the opportunity to opt out, not asking permission for, to send them spam email, not asking for people's consent before showing up in their mentions to explain their fucking thing they got a master's in. Okay. It's like, okay, well, consent and empathy and working towards solutions. It's like, well, you're not much use to anybody if you're just going to say the same shit. You may as well be a bot. You may as well just be a bot, because you're basically just doing what these blue checks are saying. It's like you're saying the same thing. You're not having an original thought. You're not being brave in any way. Again, what good can we take from this? Okay, now, obviously there comes a point where you should just not be being that guy and going, well, Hitler had some good things too. You don't say that. Some things just really outweigh that, again, I understand what he was trying to say. He's manic and he doesn't like, whatever. Okay. He also doesn't have any political power. Okay. He doesn't have any power. People, this is another problem. Okay. Again, if you're actually thinking things through, you're thinking, it's like, where are people confused? Where's the misunderstanding? And the thing is that people think that celebrities have power, and they conflate influence with power. They create idea, much like they, what was it? What was the? Hang on, what did Diane say? It was something about. Oh no, it was in the other stream where she said something about the difference between. Labor and value, okay? They're different things, okay? And it's the same thing with influence and power. These are the kinds of things that you should be quibbling over, not not regurgitating Wikipedia. We all have access to this information. Let's go back. I apologise, I'm on painkillers, and the combination of that with my ADD meds makes me a little bit loopy, but I'm pushing through, we're just chatting. I probably misspoke. Whatever. No one cares. But I'm just saying, get to the next step. But what was I going to say? Can't remember what I was saying. Oh, yeah. So we all have access to that information. And in my, are you just going to be like a for and against 10-year-old regurgitating something? Like remember when we were young, copying it out of the book and making sure that we copied it out of the book, but we changed it just enough so it looked like our own idea. Remember that? Remember how that was discouraged in school? And now it seems to be the thing that everyone wants to fucking do all the time in order to fit in. It's like, no, I'll read everything. And I was the one who I would never copy out of the book. I'd actually just go and read everything and learn everything that I could about a thing and then write my own ideas. Now, obviously with that, I struggle with structure and form and those sorts of things. I very much need an edit and I very much need to not be on stream when I've had drugs, right? But like this is the problem. It's like just this group thing. But anyway, so the verified tab, it's quite funny. So my obviously I've got my check mark now. I've had it for a month and it's been quite funny because I'm used to obviously over the years I've managed various accounts and stuff, but I've never really had I interact. Obviously I know people and stuff, but I interact via email or, private back channels or whatever, right? That's I still know famous people and blue people with a check mark. It's not something that I find. I'm saying on Twitter specifically, because I've been in the shitter on Twitter for so long, for 5 years, and you forget how much you are also kind of nudged in a way where you behave towards getting seen, because it's harder to get seen when you don't have your check mark, right? Because we're not sitting in the verified tab, so you're harder to see. And so obviously I would say something a bit more outrageous, or like I would do this thing where I will tag people without thinking, like I'll just at them while I'm talking, and I'll at them and blah blah blah. And I forgot, like speaking, I mentioned sea legs before. I forgot about how being shadow banned, I would not get sort of that pushback or any kind of, I just sort of sitting there just talking shit, being outrageous, and every so often you'd get an interaction or a straggler or, Boy George would follow you or some shit, something weird would happen, or Ricky Gervais would like laugh and whatever, okay? That's sort of the random sorts of things. But now, since I got my blue check and I'm on the verified tab, it's funny because I started chicken hawking a little bit, and I've had to recalibrate, because now people are actually answering me back. And it's really funny, like, when Elon Musk said that you'd get priority in the feed, he didn't mean that you'd get bumped in the algorithm. He just meant that you wouldn't be suppressed in the normal, like, feed. You probably feature more on the home feed, which I don't use anyway. I use lists and stuff. And, you'd be on the verified tab. And also that means that it's actually quite telling to see who suddenly replies and who doesn't, and who spends all their time on the verified tab and who doesn't. It's really fucking interesting, because you find yourself having this weird thing where people who wouldn't reply before, where I just talk shit, like Anna Kasparian. I like Anna Kasparian. I think I want her to do better. I think that she is, I'm not a fan of the Young Turks. I don't like the way that they lie. I don't like anyone else on that platform, but I do like Anna, okay? She does seem to be, somewhat, self-aware at least, okay? And she's, seems nice enough. And so I'll often just go, fucking hell, Anna, because she represents, a lot of us, like calling fucking Emma Weigel and Tracy Flick and, like all those funny witticisms that are, not necessarily something that, that if you knew they would see, you wouldn't necessarily do it, right? But it's been a funny month because I've had these altercations. Like, I don't know if anyone saw, but, I tagged Anna in a thing where she was talking, because she basically said a thing about, I don't know why Australians care so much about, like, American politics. I was like, you're our fucking government, dickhead. And I just went on a thing. And I just did my usual Tayaness, but this time people like Martina Navratilova turned up and fucking got involved. And then I had a back and forth with Edward Snowden. It's just really weird. But I actually started to recalibrate. Because again, I've obviously, having managed social media accounts, I know, but I've never conducted myself as a blue check with my own brand and my own voice and I've had to reflect on my own conduct. And it was quite funny because with Martina Navratilova, she kind of misunderstood what I was saying, because I said, look, no, America, like, get fucked, blah, blah. She's like, anyway. And her, we agree. And we came to, I got a fist bump from Martina Navratilova, and that was really cool. But it was quite funny because having her step in it was quite funny because I was all peacocky and like, yeah, yeah, yeah. And then she's replied and I was like, I'm sorry, ma'am. I didn't mean it. I forget that I could be seen. And so it's like, I feel bad. And like, I realized that, you don't, again, that warranted pause. That's why I just get really frustrated, I guess, with people who are invited back. And it's just, there's a sense of entitlement that goes with so much of this stuff, with like these check marks and stuff, where they just feel like, again, they're just, I don't know in what world they think that they're like anti-establishment or independent in any way. If, they've got the entitlement, they love, the correct process for things. They like the rules, it's inherently authoritarian, right? Authoritarians love rules and hierarchy. That's, they like being told what to do as much as they like telling people what to do. That's, the nature of an authoritarian personality, right? That theory's there, but, whatever. There's other theories, but, but it's just quite funny because, the second that I see it, I just go, oh, shit, I better change the way that I interact with people now because they can actually see me on the verified tab versus, years of shadow banning, like years of just having to say dumb shit and outrageous shit. And then, seeing that the few people with large audiences that do see me kind of saying something outrageous in the hope that they'll share it. And, obviously, most of the people who have connected with me over the years don't do that because they're in it for themselves. I've realized that. Right? I'm not really in the content creator game. And I also realized that part of the content creator game is the chicken hawking stuff, picking fights, goading them into an argument. And then I just paused for a minute with that. And I was like, well, I actually like Martina Navratilova. I still remember that epic Wimbledon match. She was my hero when I was a big tennis fan. You seem surprised. I'm not, that's not nerdy at all. No, but I was a massive tennis, played tennis and, I loved her. And then to have her push back and go, whoa. And I was like, that was the only, I made an impression there and it wasn't a very good one, right? And then I started to think about Anna. And I was like, well, okay, well, I've been dehumanizing her from the, because I've been shouting from the fucking trenches to try and get him to look at me and see me and, watch my shit. But it's like, that's the value, I think, the inherent value of the blue check on Twitter as it stands is, first of all, being able to be seen, okay, make an impression. But you do only still get one impression. You should always be thinking about that, like perception management stuff, right? And that's sort of where I've been kind of, had a chuckle at how I think I know it all and I tell others what to do and I know this. But again, we're not, we can't escape, I've been sort of nudged into a certain way where I can only get out of things by being outrageous all the time and because I'm just constantly fucking targeted by bots. And the only things that fucking get traction is me like doing that kind of stuff. But it's not really who I am. Like I'm more of a like smart ass, funny, do some Twitter threads, whatever. But, I'm surprised by those who got banned and came back. I'm still disappointed. Those that came and didn't learn a thing. They won't pay for it. They won't do anything. They just use Twitter to, bully people. Oh, this MF got paid for Twitter. That's that fucking Matt Binder, who is part of those like networks. And I know, and he like, it's like, you just use it to bully people and harass people using fucking troll farms and disinformation networks. And it's like, well, okay, well, you have clout, but there's a difference between clout and influence. And there's a definite difference between influence and power. Okay. Now, you're at clout. Okay. You've got followers. Yeah, you can sick an army of idiots onto someone. Okay. Well, fine. But, you're just copying from the fucking book. You're just another one of the, you're just sitting there writing out from the book and then changing it just enough so that you can fucking get away with things. You're not actually living a life or doing anything that challenges thinking or, gets others out of their fucking autopilot and their like lizard brain shit. At least I'm taking the risks and I'm, but I want to try and make, okay, I know I've waffled, but my takeaway today is that, it's, there's being edgy, and taking risks. And then there's being, like, you got to take the right kinds of risks. Like for me, I think taking a risk, talking about, the fact that Kanye's headed for a really big fucking crash, and that worries me, and that he got there for a multitude of different reasons, some of which are, understandable with a broken brain, and some of which are not. Okay, those around him are disgusting, exploitative. But the thing is that the people that are running content about this thing and dragging all of the stuff that they can out of this to monetize, and talking about it while saying that everyone else around him is exploiting him. Well, you are too. You're the one, mate. Like top YouTubers can make a couple of grand per, for one of those videos. Okay, easy. All right. It's not just the right wingers around him and exploiting him that are exploiting him. You're using him too. And you're spreading, and it's like, well, at least I'm honest with myself. And I go, well, let's have a real conversation then. Okay. First of all, I demonetized my channel because I wanted to be able to talk about things without, being at the mercy of the fucking ridiculous thing for my soul's more expensive than like 30 cents. It's like, I don't get the views anyway. They dropped off too because I was suppressed on YouTube as well. Again, mass reporting. It's just, it's how it is. But they got me, I sort of started to get mass reported just as the channel was sort of growing. So, it was just enough to nuke me, but who cares? But, if that's the price of the influencer game, and the price of this game is your soul. But, and you have to be not only dishonest with yourself and those around you, but you have to be, dishonest with your audience. The thing with this Elon Musk stuff and the Twitter files is watching how fucking stupid everyone has been. Like it wasn't a nothing burger, and it wasn't vindicating. Like it had some indication that there's a smoking gun there that answers some of the things that I've been talking about around the design decisions that they've been making, around, interference. I am, the fact that I suspect that there have been bribes and there have been, engineers within Twitter and people who have, a lot of power who have been manipulating the system and, flagging people, arbitrarily. And again, you don't need to do, I think, again, this comes down to a lack of understanding about how the tech works, which is that you don't necessarily need to have someone inside Twitter to intervene too much for your account to get nuked, because it's a number of signals. It's hundreds and hundreds of different ones. So what it is, it's like you got lots of mass reports. You got lots of swearing on your account. You've got, I was inactive for a couple of years. Okay, so I wasn't really that active on Twitter before I started suddenly turning and talking about this issue. That's another signal, which is that I could have sold my account on to someone, okay, and that they had then, repurposed that account even, and whatever, right? You just don't know. Again, these are all charitable explanations. These are things that I can explain. And this is why all these fucking people it's like, I've never seen a tribe of people so desperate for fucking to see someone's dick in my life. Who cares about the laptop? It's not about that. Like, they're just so fucking deranged. And I imagine that Elon Musk, again, if you look at things charitably, you go, okay, well, why did he choose Matt Taibbi? He didn't choose Matt Taibbi. Again, the bad faith interpretation of that is, he chose it. Hey, Matt Taibbi is with the Republicans because Elon Musk is with the Republicans now. And it's like a lot of fucking premises that you need to accept there that are very uncharitable and likely incorrect, okay? And it's like, there's a lot of fucking claims there that you need to back up, okay? Like Elon Musk, yes, he's been on the back of like the GOP, but I think a lot of people are because they're confused about their political access. Who isn't, okay? I'm not, because I'm fucking political scientist, but most people think that, the Republicans, because they're using the certain, language and rhetoric of the working class, they don't realize that they don't give a fuck, but, people are falling for it. Okay, America is left versus right. They think that right is left and far right is right. Like they're confused. Okay, Like, again, the history of anti-communism and anti-socialism in the United States means that they're, effectively that sort of, and that combination, that ratchet effect, and that sort of letterbox into the center right and far right is their fucking political spectrum here. And you've got your sort of commies over here, but they got no power. The far left in America have no fucking power whatsoever. And no money. Okay. And also because you've got low voter turnout and all those sorts of things. Right. So there's not really, strong class politics, and anything that resembles class politics has been sort of co-opted by this, identity nonsense that's been, it's basically, anyway, the corporate sort of, centre-right branding, right? So I've got itchy nose. This stuff's easily explained, easily fucking explained. But you'd have to accept that. Or Musk doing the best he can. He's a billionaire, okay? Yeah, so what? You're angry. You hate billionaires. Okay, we get it. All right, let's move on from that. Taibbi's largely fairly respected, okay? I like his work. I, like all journalists, assume that they're right some of the time, some more than others. On the more than others, he's right a lot more, okay? And he's more ethical as a journalist than, the vast majority of people who identify as journalists these days. Maybe he chose him because he wanted to, cover his, again, be charitable. Why is it someone selling to the right rather than Elon Musk gifting to the left? Why don't you see it that way? Because you choose to see it in that way. You choose to have a sort of negative shade on everything that your worldview, because you just, you can't admit that, things are more complex than your worldview of just fucking, black and white thinking. Everyone is bad. Everything, just because I feel that it's bad, it must be bad. It might not, and good and evil, heroes and villains, black and white, all these fucking things. The only fucking thing that you're on binary on doesn't exist, fucking idiot. But so that we've got this Twitter files thing. But anyway, so just the verified tab, one fucking concession. There's heaps like that. I watch people just like completely mischaracterize everything. Like saying that Musk was like, what was it? Oh yeah, he joked about something or other, like Epsteining, like being. It's like it was a joke. He was joking. Also, if you've been in these rooms with crypto bros, they fucking dominate and they talk over each other, and it's just much like any kind of online gaming experience. Again, you can tell who is sitting politely in a corporate setting using appropriate protocols and enforcing the manners, and fucking little miss fucking woke bitch who's like, let's just fucking organize those people, versus the chaos of something like a Twitter space with crypto bros who are all competing to talk because Elon Musk is in the room. One of them's eating potato chips. The other one fucking, whatever. That's the chaos of the spaces. But then they turn around and they go, well, Musk was asked a question about Assange and Snowden, and conveniently his stooges just interrupted and changed the topic. It's like, no, I was in that room. And do you know what happened? He was asked and he said, look, he understands the gravity of what he's saying. Because, again, to acknowledge that he said this would mean that you have to acknowledge that Elon Musk actually does know what he's doing, okay, and might not agree with it, but he knows what he's doing, okay, and that is that he understands that his words have power, okay. He understands he knows that better really well because he's fucking pissing you off. But, again, they've decided. They've already decided that he's incompetent, doesn't know what he's doing, doesn't deserve what he's got, that he is the enemy, that he's far right. All of these are just premises that just go completely unchallenged and unquestioned. And they haven't paused for a second to go, okay, well, I hate billionaires. Okay, yes, all right. What else? That's true. Okay, why do I hate billionaires? Okay, yes, there's economics, but also how do I feel about it? Okay, well, all right. Anyway. But, there's parts of that where he was just being Sorry, I've got really itchy nose. It's very distracting. But he, with Assange, I was in the room. I was with Assange and Snowden, and it was I was in the room when they were talking about that, and he basically said, I don't know enough about it to have a position on it. Okay. And then they were, there's a bit of back and forth banter. He was on a plane. I'm still amazed that you can get Wi-Fi on planes. Okay, that's fucking amazing. Let's pause for a minute and go, that's fucking amazing. But no, everyone just moans. It's not good enough. He was on a plane on the internet. On a plane. He had the internet on a plane. That's marvelous. And also, it cut out. He couldn't hear from time to time. And there was a fucking slight lag. And you're like, he was a Nazi. It's because he's a Nazi. That's why. Because I don't like him. That's the state of journalism at the moment with people. Like, I don't know who, it's like, what the fuck? And on the right, they're like obsessed and they think that everything is a fucking like persecution, moral panic bullshit. And it's like, like, go fuck yourselves. Okay. Anyway, I've waffled forever. I'm not going to talk. I might do the Balnciaga thing separately because I've already misspoken defending Kanye. So I don't think I'm going to defend that in this. I'm not. And when I say defend, I mean think it through. I'm not defending anything. But, it does go without saying that, these ideas are terrible. And if you think that, if you're looking to Kanye West for spiritual guidance, go somewhere else. It's like when people are talking about Jordan Peterson. And it's like, well, you can get those ideas from places that don't have fucking Nazi shit and misogyny shit in it, right? Go read Alfred Adler or fucking, go read other things. There's plenty of people that will give you advice without that shit. You don't have to fixate. Part of the reason why you like that is because they're affirming that nasty darkness in you. Don't rationalize it. There comes a point where you go, no, why are you getting spiritual fucking guidance from Kanye West? You just, just think about that, okay? I just want to make sure that I'm very clear that I'm not defending anything that he said or anything that he did, but I'm just trying to talk to those few people with the single, maybe, perhaps remaining synapse. Doesn't matter what he said. He said enough for you to go, okay, well, I should probably be seeking my self-help and my life advice, and I should be seeking anything like that elsewhere. And that is not about free speech. That's not censoring free speech. This is about self-help. This is literally like about making sure that you're looking after yourself, which is that if you're sitting there advocating and defending Kanye without this sort of, the clinical side, which is that this is going to end badly, he's got a daughter, these things. I'm not defending any of his ideas at all, what he said. I don't think he should have been even, again, I'm also even mixed on whether these things should be. I think they should be out in the open. But again, I'm naive about that because the other thing I think is really important to mention is that the history of sort of, stealth Nazi stuff in the United States is a lot more complex than, say, your silly bogan white supremacist, sort of here, okay, like your One Nation, they're just sort of your bargain basement sort of racists, right? That's, and even then, they're not in the same camp historically, okay, because there is that quite a unique, again, you've got to remember that these things aren't a monolith but the United States does have its own history. It just happens to be so dominant that we end up having to defend a position that isn't necessarily in our history. Yes, obviously, Nazism is everywhere and fascism is everywhere and all those sorts of things. But, Australia particularly has a very different, not better, just different history that requires a different solution. And unfortunately, the United States are like, the hammer for every fucking nail. And it's like, well, no, because they've got quite specific problems that are unique to the United States, again, they're just unique to the United States. And so I think people need to remember that the political culture that's the actual term for it is political culture, but the political culture of the United States is vastly different. Even if we may look this, we might speak the same language, and, they might quibble over definitions that have been redefined by the United States. And, their job is to sort of, create new terms for things that already exist and, brand things and say, I say X, Y, Z. It's like, no, it's not. It's not yours. You didn't think of it. So tedious. That's why I just say it's just, any kind of socialist analysis that's critiquing capitalism is like, keep it simple, guys. You don't need to quibble. It's not a for and against essay in year 5. There's no one marking you, okay? You're actually just showing that you don't know, because I don't need to defend those things because I already know. And I can just have a conversation with somebody and know roughly what they mean. I don't need to write a fucking tedious essay quibbling about the semantic differences. And if you ever want me to think that you've only just looked it up on Wikipedia, do that. Because obviously, and also if you want to understand what it means to have, a political science degree, go to Wikipedia and look at this politics section and all of that body of knowledge that exists. Okay? And knowing that I've probably spent 20 years on it and I'm not even a quarter of the way through. So if you're going to come at me, like an expert, you better fucking bring it, because it's just like, that's the difference between someone who, the reason why you write one big fucking dissertation at the end is because you're supposed to distill all of these things into one, great big idea that builds on all of these things. You don't quibble in the fucking, primary school for and against essays. Anyway, I've been talking way too long, waffling fucking, we've been going way too fucking long today. I'm sorry. I will do a Balnciaga one separately, I think. But anyway, the value, I know I promised. I think the blue check's worth it if you want to be seen, right? I apologise. I have been extra waffly today, mostly because, first of all, the fucking itchy nose drove me nuts, but also the stream dropping out through me, and then had pain. I woke up. Now I'm tired because I woke up at 2:30. Painkillers and fucking dexamphetamine, and now I've got to go do some work. So now I'm all distracted thinking about the things I've got to do. That stuff. I don't expect anyone to watch the replay for this one, but I when I haven't streamed for a week or so, I do this. But anyway, but I just want to, full stop, comma, colon, exclamation point, full stop. Not defending anything that he said, but I think that do the exercise where you go, okay, well, what am I really mad about? What's the real issue? Because you're not going to get any solutions if you're just mad about a thing and seeing the world like in absolute terms. Even when it comes to, I'm guilty. I mean, you've got to do this for economy, right? But it takes skill to work in comms and to create a something that's persuasive and simple without oversimplifying requires knowledge and skill. Okay. It's not easy to do. And it's I mean, this is, that's why Twitter's so shit, but there's people who do actually, take it, like the other day. So I was just thinking about with George Orwell, and, this is my day. George Orwell was a socialist, guys, because you see all these dickheads, libertarianism, fuck me. American libertarianism, with a capital L, is literally the stupidest fucking ideology. It's just so stupid. Like, I'm libertarian with an L in the traditional classical theoretical sense, but these guys are fucking stupid. Jesus fucking Christ. It's just fucking dumbasses. But, the Ayn Rand types. But at the same time, but even with like America, like you got a straw man, you got to oversimplify to make a point and to persuade. Like part of being in persuasion is to create, sort of build on stereotypes. Like that's why you got to ease up on art and comedy, because art uses symbols to communicate a stronger message. And I'll talk about that with Balnciaga, like separately. But, you've got to simplify to be persuasive, and those things are at odds with each other. But to then turn around and go, on Twitter, okay, where you go, Orwell was a socialist, guys. Anyone who's on fucking Twitter for 10 minutes knows what I meant. But then someone's like, actually, he's a libertarian socialist. No, he wasn't. Oh, no, he was an anarchist. No, he wasn't. Actually, he's actually more like a libertarian, says the American bro. No, he definitely was not. Not the one you're thinking of. Then I had someone else say he was a social democrat. I said, no, he wasn't. Democratic socialist. And also he was arguing for material. He was actually fucking talking about you dickheads. Saying stop quibbling and focus on what's real, dickheads. That was, Orwell was just, anyway. I'm not a Marxist really even. Marx and Orwell, the common thread with those guys is material analysis, where they were focused on not theoretical fucking bullshit, but on what's actually in front of you and what the real pain is and for solving the problem. Anyway, that was me just waffling. But fucking sorry about my note. Just driving me nuts. It's probably driving you nuts too. So anyway, I'm going to go. I made no sense. I'm going to go. Might have a nap and something to eat. Haven't eaten either. So. But I'll come back and do a separate thing when I haven't had so much painkillers. All right. I love you. Become a patron if you want. Up until, I have applied for a job that I would like, but I'm not in the habit of applying for jobs very much. It's only just because it's this one for this particular organisation. Otherwise, if that happens, then I'll be turning off the Patreon because it's, I can't grow it. But if obviously if I can get it to a point where I'm self-sustaining there, then that would be good. But it's up to you. I've got to go and make Christmas miracles happen. I love you. Thanks for watching. I appreciate it, especially today because I'm, a little bit stoned. I will be back this week and I'll do Balnciaga maybe Thursday. Yeah. What day is it today? Wednesday. Yeah, so maybe probably Friday morning. See how we go. Depends how I go with my work. So I'm trying to get invoices out so Christmas miracles can happen because that's, and I've got shit to pay. Anyway, I love you. Thanks for watching. Thank you for your precious life seconds and thank you for your patience today. Hopefully I haven't said anything of, but just primary sources, people. Think for yourself. Are you copying out of the book or are you actually learning things and thinking things through? And I think more people should do less. Yeah. We used to get in trouble for that. Now we're rewarded. Okay. That's where things have changed, is now you're rewarded for just copying out of the book and paraphrasing the book rather than actually, focusing on, your learning and lessons and, doing good in the world. So hopefully my intentions were clear. I'm sorry I didn't really address it in a business way, but I will talk more about, like I said, I'll break this off and do Moral Panic and Balnciaga separately. It's just too much stuff. I was going to try and link that together through Twitter because Twitter is basically a moral panic factory. But it's just not doable with my brain the way it is today. So my executive function is not great. It's not great at the best of times. It's worse now. So anyway, I love you. I'm going to go. Take care. I will be back with my Snapchat filter thingies as well. My nose is so red. Anyway, I love you. I'll see you later. Bye. Do, 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 do. If you want to write a song for my channel, love you. Bye. This sucked. Forgive me. It's almost like no one's perfect. Bye. I'm going to go scratch the fuck out of my nose. Bye.